My name is Erin, and I never believed that a single whisper could change the entire direction of my life. Until that day. The day I boarded Flight 739. I was just tired that morning. Not scared, not suspicious, just tired. The airport had been crowded, security lines slow, and I'd barely slept the night before. I found my seat, 12A, slumped into it, and closed my eyes for a moment as people shuffled down the aisle. If only I had known what waited for me. I remember the exact second things changed. A shadow fell across me. I thought it was just another passenger storing luggage overhead. But when I opened my eyes, it was a flight attendant. Early 30s, crisp uniform, hair neatly tied back, but her face? Something was off. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were fighting panic. She bowed her head slightly as if speaking to a child and whispered so softly I almost thought I imagined it. "You have to disembark immediately." I froze. "Sorry, what?" I whispered back. She glanced quickly at the passengers behind her, then lowered her voice even more. "Please, you need to leave this plane right now." My mind raced, confused. Was there an issue with my ticket? Did something show up in security? Was it a mistake? "I'm not going anywhere," I replied quietly. "Tell me what's happening." Her lip trembled. She wanted to say something, but she stepped back, forced a smile, and walked away. And I didn't move. I didn't listen. That was the beginning of everything. Passengers kept boarding. A family with screaming kids, a businessman rolling his eyes at everyone, an elderly couple searching for overhead space. Normal chaos. But nothing felt normal anymore. When the flight attendant passed again, she pretended to check seatbelts. Her fingers brushed my arm, light but deliberate. Something small fell onto my lap. A folded napkin. I slid it under the tray table and silently opened it. One word written in shaky blue ink. "Run." My heart hammered violently. I tried to look for her, but she'd already disappeared behind the curtain into business class. What was this? A threat? A warning? A mistake? The engines started humming louder as the plane prepared for departure. I should have stood up, should have gone to the flight deck, should have done something. But no, I stayed seated because I didn't want to look scared. I didn't want attention. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. The captain's voice boomed. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." The doors closed. And that's when I noticed the man in 12C. Gray hoodie, hands on his knees, head bowed, no phone, no bag. Almost like he wasn't even present. I hadn't paid attention to him earlier, but something about him struck me now. As the plane started moving, he lifted his head slowly, very slowly, and turned toward me. Our eyes met. Cold. Emotionless. Strangely calculating. Then he smiled. A slow, unsettling smile that didn't belong on a normal person's face. I looked away instantly. At the front of the cabin, the flight attendant stood stiff, gripping the service counter so hard her knuckles were white. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. And in her eyes, I saw it again. Fear. The engines roared, the plane tilted upward. We were airborne. 15 minutes later, turbulence hit. The cabin jolted, drinks rattled, people groaned. But there was one person who didn't react at all. The man in 12C. He sat perfectly still, unmoving, eyes scanning the cabin like he was waiting for something. My chest tightened. Then, footsteps. The same flight attendant returned, but this time she wasn't pretending. She crouched down beside me, her hands trembling visibly. "Listen to me," she whispered urgently. After we land, go straight to airport security. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone. Don't let anyone follow you. Why? Why me? What's going on? Her eyes darted toward 12C. She opened her mouth to speak, but a call light rang and she stood so fast she nearly lost her balance. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then she rushed away. I turned slowly to 12C. He was staring at me with a slight smirk. He waited a moment, then leaned slightly toward me without looking fully at my face. You didn't listen to her, he said softly. My stomach dropped. How do you know what she said? He didn't look surprised. You're here for a reason, Erin, whether you realize it or not. I don't know you. No, he agreed, but you know someone. Someone important. Someone who didn't tell you the truth. What truth? I whispered. He finally looked at me fully then. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were amused. Hasn't anyone told you? The deepest betrayals come from the people closest to you. I stared at him speechless. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The next hour was the longest of my life. The cabin lights dimmed, people slept, soft conversations drifted through the air. But the flight attendant avoided me completely, and the man in 12C sat frozen, waiting. When the captain finally announced descent, I felt relief wash through me, but it didn't last. As the plane dipped through clouds, the man leaned forward again. It won't matter when we land. They'll already be waiting for you. Who? I demanded. He smiled faintly. You'll see. The plane touched down. Screech of wheels, passengers clapped. Normality returned, at least for everyone else, but not for me. As we taxied to the gate, the flight attendant passed me one last time. Her shoulders sagged, her eyes glistened with tears. She dropped another folded note onto my tray table without breaking stride. I opened it with trembling hands. I'm sorry. They told you you wouldn't listen. My throat tightened painfully. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. This was planned. By someone who knew where I'd be. Someone who wanted me scared. Someone who arranged every piece. The door opened with a soft chime. Passengers stood, but I didn't. My phone buzzed. A message popped up from someone I trusted deeply. 2 words. Don't run. The breath left my body. I looked toward the front of the plane. 4 uniformed officers stood there, scanning the rows. Their eyes locked onto mine immediately. Not 12C, me. Passengers murmured. A woman whispered, "Oh my God, is he dangerous?" Someone pulled their child closer. My skin crawled. 12C stood, calmly pulled up his hood and walked off the plane, untouched, unnoticed, like a ghost slipping between realities. The officers approached me. One spoke firmly. "Sir, come with us." I rose unsteadily. As I stepped into the aisle, the flight attendant leaned close, her voice breaking. "I tried to warn you, but not to save you from him, to save you from what's coming next." A shiver tore through me. I was escorted off the plane, down the narrow jet bridge, into a cold fluorescent hallway. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same person. "It's already done." My heartbeat roared in my ears. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. This wasn't about danger. This was about betrayal. A betrayal that didn't start on the plane. It started long before, with someone I trusted. Someone who was watching, planning, waiting. And now that I had stepped off the aircraft, the real story was just beginning. When they pulled me off the plane, I thought the worst was over, that whatever invisible line I'd crossed on Flight 739 had been crossed at someone else's command, and once I was off, I could explain it away. I could call the person who sent that message. I could laugh and say it was all a mistake. I was wrong. They led me down the jet bridge like a man being escorted to his own execution. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and my shoes clicked against metal plating. The world smelled of recycled air and fear. Every step felt like walking deeper into a maze I didn't know the map to. At the bottom of the bridge, the officers stopped. One of them, the older one with the thick jaw and the tired eyes, looked at me as if trying to find recognition in my face that would justify the suspicion stamped across his own. He flipped open a notebook. "Sir, we're taking you to a secure area for questioning," he said. "It's routine in situations like this." "What situation?" I asked. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "I don't—" "You were flagged by airline security for suspicious behavior," the younger officer answered. He was efficient, polite, the kind who carried his authority like a well-worn coat. "We have to verify your identity and the reason you were given to disembark. Please come with us." They walked me into a small, windowless room. A single table, 3 chairs, a clock that ticked like an accusation. The flight attendant, Claire, I remembered her name from the tag on her uniform, watched from the doorway, face unreadable. She met my eyes briefly and then looked away. Whatever she'd tried to do felt useless now. She had warned me. It had changed nothing. "Sit," the older officer said. I sat, hands flat on the metal table. Feelings slid under my skin, embarrassment, confusion, anger. Mostly anger. How could someone plan this? How could anyone send me into a trap so neatly? An agent in plain clothes came in next, hatless, in a suit that smelled faintly of expensive coffee. He introduced himself as Special Agent Moreno. He smiled in the way people do when they are about to do something necessary but unpleasant. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "you were asked to leave Flight 739 by a member of the cabin crew. Can you tell me why?" I opened my mouth, closed it. "She told me to run," I said. "She handed me a note." He nodded slowly, as if this fit into a puzzle he hadn't finished. "Do you have the note?" I patted my pocket. The napkin, the one that had said run, still sat there folded. I handed it across the table. He unfolded it with fingers that pretended not to tremble. "Is that all she gave you?" "She gave me another note when we landed," I said. "She said she was sorry, but I don't know. I don't know why she told me to leave." Agent Moreno's eyes slid to the doorway, where Claire still stood, arms folded. "You were also flagged by a passenger who reported your behavior as suspicious," he continued. "Can you explain what you did on the flight that might have made someone report you?" I wanted to laugh. I sat, I read, I was handed a napkin. I refused to leave. He steepled his fingers. The clock ticked. Outside, muffled through the wall, passengers shuffled, voices woven with the constant background drone of an airport. "Do you understand that, under the current circumstances, this looks unusual?" Moreno asked. "We have protocols for safety threats. When a stranger tells a passenger to leave a plane, we treat it seriously." "Then ask the woman," I snapped. "She tried to warn me." He looked at Claire. She stepped forward, hands folded in front of her, face suddenly professional in the way people become when the gravity of something forces them to shed their panic and wear authority like armor. "Mr. Hayes," she said, voice steady. "I encountered him mid-boarding. He was not the kind of passenger who would cause alarm ordinarily. But I saw something, a pattern, and I acted." "Explain the pattern," Moreno said. She swallowed. "Flight 739 has a standard passenger manifest. There are protocols for security checks. I intercepted a communication, internal, small, but consistent with a pattern we trained for. I was told not to intervene, that it was handled. But when I saw Mr. Hayes, something about him matched the parameters of a targeted approach. I couldn't leave it to chance." "Parameters for what?" I demanded. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw guilt, not just fear. "I can't say more in this room," she whispered. But after we landed, people I reported to, they made a call. I was told to keep him on board, but I saw the look in the control room, or whoever it is, and I knew they would use him for something else. I thought if I got him off the plane, it might save him from being manipulated. Agent Moreno expression hardened. Are you saying someone higher up compromised this flight crew's decision? She hesitated, a pause that spoke volumes. All I can say here is I tried to warn him. I failed. Silence wedged itself into the room. The clock kept counting the seconds. You said someone reported Mr. Hayes's behavior as suspicious, Moreno said. The younger officer cleared his throat and produced a statement. Passenger in 12C reported that the subject had been acting erratically and that he'd witnessed the subject speaking suspiciously to a crew member. I remembered his cold smile, the way his eyes had tracked me. 12C. Hood up, a man who walked off the plane like he'd never existed. He lied, I said. He spoke to me. He told me things. He told you things, Claire said softly. What did he say? He said I didn't listen to you, I said. He said I was part of something bigger. He said betrayal comes from those close to you. Agent Moreno leaned back. Any enemies, threats, recent conflicts with colleagues, business partnerships, personal issues? I thought of my life, boring, linear, reasonably secure. Work at the marketing firm, a girlfriend who cooks on Sundays and left notes on the fridge. Friends, yes, but none of them seemed capable of orchestrating airport conspiracies. No, I lied. No enemies, no recent arguments. You expect us to believe that? The older officer asked, voice edged with impatience. We're calling your references. The interrogation felt clinical and cold. They asked questions that should have been easy. Names of people I'd been with recently, the last places I had been, the credit cards I used, whether I had been subject to any prior surveillance. Each answer felt like handing them a thread that could unravel me. At one point, the young officer brought in the footage from the plane, cabin cams, security cameras. I watched myself on a small monitor, a stranger in motion. The flight attendant wept in the corner of the frame. The man in 12C barely registered on screen as he moved like a shadow. I watched the napkin drop and my fingers tremble when I opened it. I watched Claire hand me the second note at the gate, the look on her face unreadable. Do you know anyone at your company who might want to frame you? Moreno asked, eyes drilling into mine. I wanted to answer truthfully. I wanted to say no one. But then I thought of texts I'd brushed aside, the offhand remark from my partner Marcus about trusting the wrong people, the way Maya sometimes looked at my phone with a curiosity that felt like scissors. Maya, I said. Both officers sat up. Who Maya? The older one asked. Maya Patel, I said. My girlfriend. She works as a consultant for several firms. She's been helping me with a side project recently. But no, I don't think she'd set me up. We'd never. She wouldn't. You said she had access to your phone, Moreno asked. It's not just access, I said, retrieving my phone from my pocket. Messages, calls, images, everything were in plain sight. I scrolled, showed him late-night texts with Maya, affectionate and mundane. Look. He skimmed quickly. You two seem close. We called her. Her voice answered on the first ring. Erin, everything okay? She asked, warmth like a blanket. Not here, I said. Can you come to the airport? I'm being questioned. There was a pause, a short, weird silence. I'm in the middle of a meeting, she said finally. I can get there. Where are you? I told her. She said she'd be there in 40 minutes. 40 minutes could be an eternity. It was also almost exactly the amount of time until they told me that the passenger in 12C had filed an official complaint and that there were records of a transfer of data from my phone to an unknown device during the flight. That's impossible, I said. I didn't transfer anything. They brought the logs up on the screen. A timestamp, during the flight, a small burst of data, less than a megabyte, transferred. Metadata indicated a device within close range. The code was obscured, but the transaction appeared legitimate. Who has access to your phone? Moreno asked. I felt my face flush. Maya knows my passcode sometimes because I'm sleep-deprived and she's helped unlock it, but she wouldn't. Mr. Hayes, the older officer interrupted,
We're looking at this objectively. Right now, you're a subject in a potential security breach and possibly a pawn in a larger scheme. We have to consider all possibilities. Maya arrived holding her bag and looking like someone who had been wrenched out of her day. She hugged me, a quick public hug, then turned to the officers, face composed. "Claire called me," she said. "She said there was an incident." "Did you send the message, 'Don't run'?" Moreno asked without preparation. Maya's lips parted. "No, who sent you that message?" I held up my phone to the screen. The message notification was still there. "Don't run," from an unknown number with a simple signature. R. Maya's face didn't change, not at first. Then a small tremor passed through her hand. "That could be from my work," she said. "We communicate with code sometimes for client work, but I haven't used that shorthand in months." Moreno looked at her like he was weighing her against the world.
Marcus, I said. He's the only one who uses that shorthand sometimes for clients. Maya's face softened and then hardened. He said R is a middleman he uses when deals get sticky, but he said he'd never let R touch anything personal. "You said Marcus would be here," I said. She nodded. "He's on his way." When Marcus arrived, he looked like a man who had been pulled through a storm and been told to pretend the rain hadn't happened. He hugged Maya tightly and then turned to me with a smile that wavered. "Jesus, Erin, what happened?" he asked. I told him everything. The napkin, the note, the man in 12C, the transfer. His face remained carefully blank until I said the name R. At that, something like recognition and a crack of fear showed in Marcus's eyes. He ran a hand through his hair. "Ra is a fixer," Marcus said finally. "He's used by people who need things made to look like accidents. I thought I'd cut him off months ago. I thought we were done." "You called him?" I asked. "I didn't," Marcus said immediately. "Not for this. Not ever for this." "How can we prove that?" I demanded. "Logs show data transferred. Payments went to shell accounts with connections to R." Marcus rubbed at his temple. "I'll pull everything. I can call some friends. We can dig into the server logs. We can show you the chain. We can prove it wasn't us." Agent Moreno watched this exchange like a man watching a poker game in which he held most of the cards. "Mr. Hayes," he said slowly, "we'll continue our investigation. We need cooperation from all parties involved. For now, we'll release you on the condition you remain available for questioning and you do not leave the country." Relief came in a flat wave. I blinked, thinking my world might resume its orbit. Outside the holding area, Jonah pulled me aside. "Be careful who you trust," he said. "R is dangerous. He's slippery. If he's involved, this will not end quietly." "Who is he?" I asked. Jonah hesitated. "A ghost in the system. He uses people who think they know the game and then disappears. He's small time on the surface and big time when you look deeper. He's the kind of man who will sign his name with an initial and expect you to know the rest." R had been an initial, a signature on the message that had changed my life. The idea that someone could be that careful, that cruel, made a chill run down my spine. We left the airport under watchful eyes. Cameras tracked us, officers trailed at a discreet distance. Maya insisted on driving me home, though my apartment felt less like a refuge and more like a stage for the next act. That night, I sat in the dark and watched my phone like it might reveal a secret. Messages from Marcus pinged, fragments of code, server timestamps, a bank transfer noted as consulting fee. Nothing that tied him directly to the data transfer, but enough to make the picture murky. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed, an unknown number. The message read, "Stop digging. You're dangerous to yourself. R." I put my phone down and laughed, a hollow sound, and then I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find Claire, the flight attendant, standing with a small bag in her hand and eyes red from crying. "I couldn't sleep," she said. I keep thinking about you in that seat. I saw them talking about the transfer, and I thought maybe I should bring you something. Food, maybe? Comfort." Her presence was a balm and a blade. She stepped inside like she belonged and set the bag on my table. "You said you warned me," I said.
Why? Because I know what it looks like when someone's being groomed, she said. I worked a flight 2 years ago where a man was targeted in a similar way. He was made to look unstable, then removed, and his business collapsed. I couldn't stand by and watch. I hoped. You hoped you could save me? She nodded. We sat on the couch like two conspirators who hadn't planned the conspiracy. She told me fragments about an internal chat she'd glimpsed, about her supervisor who'd been oddly quiet, about the crew being told different things by different people. She confessed that she'd taken risks, showing me the notes, slipping me the napkin, because she'd wanted to give me a chance to choose. I messed up, she said. Maybe I should have refused the order outright. Maybe I should have gone to the captain, but I panicked. I thought getting you off would help. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small packet. I saved this, she said. I thought maybe you'd need proof I tried to help. Inside was a folded service log with scribbled notes. It wasn't much. It was something. You did what you could, I said, pressing the packet to my chest. Outside, a car idled at the curb, lights dim. Through my blinds, I could see a silhouette, a figure moving with the measured calm of someone who knows where all the exits are. Jonah, perhaps, or someone else. Claire looked at me, eyes narrowed. R watches people who dig, she said. If you keep going, you'll get answers. You'll also get marked. I thought about that message. Stop digging. I thought about Marcus's cryptic evasions and Maya's hesitations. I thought about the way Jonah had seemed both predator and protector. Sleep came in fits and starts that night, full of images of planes and napkins and initials. In the morning, I woke with a plan that felt like both courage and desperation. I would trace the transfer. I would pull server logs. I would find R and make him show his face. Or I would find the person who signed with an R and make them show their face. I would find out who betrayed me. I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. We have to meet, he said. Now. I found something in the logs. There's an IP ping that routes through 3 proxies, then hits a server that we use for backups. The timestamp matches the transfer during the flight. Who's behind the proxies? I asked. He hesitated. A combination of shell companies, the kind you set up when you don't want people to trace you. It's messy, but I can pull it apart. We need someone with legal access to our servers to get the raw logs. Can you do it? I asked. I can, he said, but it'll look worse if we're seen together right now. I didn't care about optics. I cared about truth. We met in a diner that smelled of burnt coffee and bleach, late enough that only a few people sat hunched over their own caffeine rituals. Marcus slid into the booth across from me. He looked exhausted, and for the first time, he looked small. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. I told him about the napkin, the notes, the messages, the officers. I told him about Jonah and Claire and the airport room that smelled of cold metal and possibilities. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he rubbed his forehead. This was never supposed to touch you, he said. We used R once to smooth over a contract. It was supposed to be a favor, a small, distant cleanup. I thought it was handled. I thought we cut ties. I thought I could control it. Did you send that message? I asked. No, he said quickly. I would never. I don't text like that. He sighed. R is not a man you can control. He's a network, a name that represents a method. Maybe R is the original middleman. Maybe it's an initial used by whoever needs obscurity. If he's back, it's bad. Who would want to hurt me? I asked. Marcus's gaze flicked to the street outside, and in that motion, I read something like fear. There are people who lose money if the app succeeds. There are investors who would rather see it fail than split returns. There are clients we left behind. There are competitors. Most of them wouldn't stoop to this, but one of them might. We started pulling at the thread. Marcus fed me server timestamps and transaction IDs. We followed routing paths that led to dead ends. And then to a name, a shell company called Arden Solutions, registered to a lawyer in Eastern Europe who claimed not to know the company existed. Arden, Marcus said, tasting the name like sour fruit. I've seen this in another contract. It's a middle company. It's a smear front. We sharpened our plan. Obtain raw server logs, subpoena the shell company, follow the money to a physical address, and force answers. It was the kind of plan that needed legal muscle. We needed someone who could step on a few toes and survive the backlash. That night, as I slept, I dreamed of being on Flight 739 again. The hush, the napkin, the man in 12C's smile, Claire's hand on my arm. The dream merged with the waking world, until I could no longer tell which was which. When I woke the next morning, there was a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo of me, taken from across the street. A caption on the back, "Nice try, R." I sat down on the stoop and stared at the image. The world had become a page where someone else was writing the footnotes. I understood then that answers would not come cleanly. They would be handed over like cards from a stacked deck. I picked up my phone and typed 3 words. "I need help." His reply came quickly. "Meet me at the pier at dusk. Come alone." I looked at Maya and Marcus and Claire. Each a possibility, each a person I trusted and yet might not be able to trust. Betrayal no longer felt like a theory. It felt like a weather pattern, moving in, inevitable, and cold. At dusk, I walked to the pier. The city was a smear of sodium light and water. Jonah was already there, leaning on the railing, looking less like a shadow and more like a man who'd seen too many corners of the world. I talked. He told me about a network of observers who watched patterns, how people like R cut deals, how they leave crumbs. He told me he'd pulled the man in 12C out of a training program, that he'd been instructed to play a role. He told me things that both comforted and terrified me. R used initials. R used proxies. Sometimes R worked with people inside organizations.